In today's episode, you'll hear from Will Greenblatt, former actor turned storytelling coach, about how fitness and health marketers can use powerful personal and customer stories to engage their audience. You're listening to the High Conversion Health Marketer Podcast, the show that helps you craft memorable copy and messaging that connects, captivates, and converts. My name is Linda Malone, certified conversion copywriter and an award-winning content writer whose copy lands my clients major contracts. My mission is to help you, the health and fitness marketer, attract your ideal customer with copy they can't resist so you can grow your business. So in this episode, we'll cover how to craft an origin story that builds trust. Will also share the 2 key story frameworks every business needs and the biggest mistakes fitness brands make. I start out by asking Will how he got started as an actor at a young age.
The very first audition I ever went up for was a lead in an American movie. I'm Canadian, and I got it. So like at age 7, never having done anything before, and now I'm playing this lead character. It was with Anne Bancroft, if you remember her. And yeah, it was crazy. It was like the movie didn't do that well, but it felt like a really big deal. And it just kicked off this childhood acting career, and I just kept working.
So Will's experience as an actor and later as a teacher laid the foundation for his expertise in storytelling. But what really set him on his path? A personal struggle that transformed his understanding of how stories shape not just marketing, but our lives. Here's what he says about that.
My brother passed away when I was a teenager, and it really messed me up. And like I was sort of drinking too much and doing the kind of things that a young person does when a really tragic event happens. It's just really hard. And when you do get a part, it's often a really cheesy a TV show that you don't even like. It's not interesting. You don't feel like you're using your skills. And so some people can hack through that time and make it to the point where they can choose their parts and make a career. But if you don't love it, you will not make it. And so I didn't love it enough.
How did that kind of segue into your speaking? So you do more speaking now, or what is it that you predominantly do?
Half speaking and half speaking coaching. So my clients are usually coaches or consultants or entrepreneurs who want to kind of add speaker to their resume. They want to start getting paid and deliver speaking gigs, but they either don't feel confident on stage or they don't know how to find paid gigs, or both. So I kind of give them the tools to be really confident, and I also help them create what I call the signature workshop. So that's like half my work. And then the other half is like still being in the trenches myself and, traveling around, doing these in-person talks, doing webinars, and going to speak about speaking and storytelling at these different places.
While traveling to China, Will experienced an injury that changed the entire trajectory of his career path and set the stage for his current path.
So I first heard it when I was 19 years old in my back. I first heard it in theater school, doing this insane movement class that was like way too intense. And I started getting back pain. At 19 years old, I was like an old man. I couldn't play sports anymore. I couldn't exercise anymore. And then after about a couple of years, I started recovering, but I didn't really know what had happened to me or why I was feeling this way. And then it was like every few months, I would just get sidelined for like a week where I'd have to lie down and not do anything. And it was really annoying, but I learned to live with it. Then I traveled around the world. As I said, I went to Spain and China. And then in China, we were working like 14 hours a day. It was a startup. We were paying ourselves no money. It was incredibly stressful. We raised $250,000 from an angel investor. That money felt like a burden, and we were worried if we were going to be able to return the investment. It was just really stressful time. And I just started feeling this pain in my leg, and my back was getting worse, but I started feeling this pain down my foot. And I was like, what is that?
Oh no.
And then 3 days after feeling that way, I couldn't get out of bed. Like I couldn't physically get out of bed without just this insane shooting pain down the side of my leg. And finally I got home to Canada, and I thought, I'll go home and I'll get some kind of surgery treatment, and I'll come back to China. I'll keep working on this company. And then when I got there, the doctors are like, you're not going anywhere. This is really serious. And so it was a massive disc herniation between the L5-S1 vertebrae. A doctor, when he saw it, he started laughing. He's like, hey man, can I keep this? This is crazy. And he was like laughing at my injury in front of me.
That's as bad as naming a disease after you or something.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing this. And but it was so crazy because I was like, basically, I was made to be this like dependent person.
And you were
I
how old? You were still really young,
I
right?
was 26 years old, I think, at that
Wow.
time. And so I was back after being a startup founder. I had a girlfriend. I had my own apartment in China. I was learning Chinese and doing all this business out there. I felt super confident in where I was in life. And then all that got taken away. And I really felt stripped to like nothing.
So when it looked like all hope was gone, Will finally found a solution to his pain, one that he never would have considered, and it worked. Talk therapy.
I did cognitive behavioral therapy, which I don't know if you know CBT.
I've heard of it. Yeah, yeah.
And then I did mindfulness meditation also based on that recommendation. And the two of those things like kind of saved my life. And by doing mindfulness meditation, where I just sat with my pain and with my body and just kind of like released the tension and stopped being so scared and tight and like holding my muscles and doing all this stuff, I started to let go some of the tension. And then with the CBT, I rewired my brain to stop thinking about things so negatively. And
that what helped you better?
Oh. And then as I looked at all this work that I was doing, like emotionally and psychologically on myself, I was like, it started helping me in other ways. And I started connecting with people better. I started being able to like have better conversations with people. And then as I started my company, I started weaving the stuff I was learning in therapy and in mindfulness into my work, and my clients were having amazing success with it. So then I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I realized that the negative thoughts you have in your mind are telling you a story. And you don't have to keep telling yourself the same story if it's not helping you. So by literally telling yourself a new story, you can change your reality. And that's now what I'm super focused on, is helping people write their own story, author their own story, and share it with the world so that they can feel more confident in who they are, but that it also like allows them to get more clients and get more visibility and show up on stages and show up on camera.
Notice how Will's personal struggle wasn't just a turning point in his life. It also became the foundation of how he helps others. So this is the power of storytelling. When you share an authentic transformation, your audience sees themselves in your journey. So next, Will tells how his experience led to him determining that as marketers, we have two important stories that we need to tell.
You have your story, or the company's origin story, and then you have your customer story. And those are slightly different, but they overlap sometimes. But you should focus on them as different things and then create them each as separate things. And then you can start to see where they interact. But there's two different frameworks. So we can get into them one at a time if that's helpful. The origin story, or what I call the 3-act personal story, is how you explain how you or your company got from not existing to today. Mm-hmm. And you can do that if you're a solo trainer, let's say. So the way I do it is it's kind of what I told you here today. I was an actor. I started acting at 7 years old. Then I continued it through my childhood. And that first part, that first act, we call the childhood origin. Now, most people won't go back to their childhood in a business setting because they think it's unprofessional. Why am I telling random stories about my childhood? They don't care. They just care if I've got my certifications, or they just care if, how many clients I've helped. I called on that. I think people do really care. They just don't know until they hear it. Every time you hear about somebody's childhood, you just go, it's like a gift you give someone when you open up. It's like showing people baby pictures. They love it. And they just connect with you as a human being, right? If you show your baby picture to someone, just watch them, like the way they like laugh. And it's just this beautiful thing you do where you kind of let somebody into your humanity as a child. But it's got to make sense. It's got to be relevant. Because if I told you I loved animals as a kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian. That's sweet. It has nothing to do with the work I do now.
Right.
So it's like, why am I telling you that? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I also wanted to be a hockey player. I'm Canadian. I thought I was going to be in the NHL, right? No. And that's funny. It's cute, but it's not relevant to the work I'm doing now. So That's why I don't start my story with those points. I started acting at 7 because I use my acting with the work I do today. So it's relevant.
Segues into it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also unique. Not everybody is an actor. And if you tell people, oh, I grew up in a big city and I had one sibling and my parents never got divorced, like that's not interesting. It's kind of a standard boilerplate life So it's got to be something unique and it's got to be relevant to the work you're doing. Then at some point we come to the second act, which is youth awakening. And very often in people's lives, this is a traumatic incident or a shocking incident or something really difficult that they went through. For me, it was my brother dying, as I told you earlier. Like, that changed everything for me. And the reason I talk about that, and I'm comfortable talking about that, is I've been to therapy, I've processed it, but I also know that I can't really tell my true life story without including that because it was so impactful. And when I do tell people that, they really open up, and they really, I find there's a lot of connection made after I share something like that. People will tell me their own stories, or they'll connect in a different way. It changes the energy in the room in a good way, I believe. So I say, if you can identify the real low point and the real shift in your young life, then talk about it. If it's too much for you now, if you haven't processed it, don't share it if you haven't dealt with it. If it's still, they always say for vulnerable stories, share your scars, not your wounds.
That's a good.
Very, very useful. Yeah, very useful quote to remember. So, but you think about what's the low point. And like, let's say if it's for a fitness trainer, very often it's like, I've heard this a million times from different fitness trainers. I was playing basketball, football, hockey, and then I was on my way and I hurt myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's why I didn't become a professional athlete. I've heard that one a million times. And every time it's interesting because when they really tell it properly, it's like, I relate because I've been through an injury, but you're just like, man, that's awful. You were going on this one track and then it all got taken away from you. Mm-hmm. And then after that, there's always a period of like wandering, not knowing what you wanted to do. This is still in the act 2 of the youth awakening. But then eventually you come to your act 3, your adult choice. And then you go, I'm going to take all that's happened to me, the good stuff, the bad, and I'm going to do something with it. And I'm going to do work that matters and helps people and is tied into these experiences that I have. And then so you are able to integrate your past in a way that like some people could have taken it negatively, you're turning it into something positive. And then once you tell that adult choice, then you can start to brag and you can start to list your accomplishments because you've talked about your childhood, you've talked about your difficulties. Now you can say, and I've been certified by this, I was a national champion. I have the clients like Nike and whatever. You can start listing off your accolades because people are now rooting for you because they've heard your story. Yeah. Whereas when somebody comes in, they go, well, I work for Nike and I got all these certifications. It just comes across braggy if they haven't earned your trust yet. Right. So that is the childhood origin, the youth awakening, the adult choice. That's the story that you tell about yourself or your company, which is so important for people connecting. And as you can tell, it works much better when it's told via an individual, not a company.
So as Will talked, I thought of how this seemed appropriate for an about page if you're writing an about page for yourself or for your client. And I asked him about it, and here's what he said.
That would be a great place for it. It's great to do on social posts too. Like every once in a while, every month, really, write a version of this post for your social media. The other classic quote I love is, "You're not marketing to a crowd, you're marketing to a parade." People are constantly walking by. They miss your story. They miss your story. They miss your story. So just tell it again as much as you can, because people are not seeing it. Like I still post on my LinkedIn I tell my story about like actor to speaking coach. And I have the words recovering actor in my bio. I still get people who are like, oh, I had no idea you were an actor.
So let's break that down really quickly. So your origin story is how you or your company got started. It humanizes your brand and builds trust. Your customer story shows a real transformation. It proves the impact of your product or service. So when you get both of these right, you create an emotional connection that sells. A lot of times when I'm writing an about page for a client, there's always I always tell them it's got to weave into your customer's journey too. So that's what you said there is an overlap, right? So that's what I want to.
Ideally there is, especially if you're a personal trainer, but like sometimes your journey and your customer's journey is slightly different. Mm-hmm. That's not always a bad thing as long as there's echoes, as long as it's sort of understandable why why they would come to you.
Okay.
But you have to know their story. And so with the guy I talked about, the beard mobility training guy, his story reflects his customer story, or at least this version of his story. So what he says is, I used to always be in chronic pain, even though I was really strong. I was a bodybuilder, but I couldn't move. I felt stiff. I felt trapped in my own body. Then I discovered mobility training. I got more flexible. I got more mobile. I started moving with less pain. And best of all, I am preserving my body as I age. And that short little video has a problem, a solution, and a prize. And if you get this right, your social media game will go to the next level. Your website will go to the next level. That is your customer story. Mm-hmm. They exist in a problem, a state of being in a problem. You have a solution for them. And then if they follow that solution, they will get a prize, which is a better state of living. Now, luckily for him, his journey maps on exactly to his customers. You feel stiff, you feel in pain. I used to feel stiff. I used to feel in pain. I discovered mobility training. I'll teach you mobility training. Now I feel like this, here you can feel like this, right? So that's really useful, him mapping on his own story.
Yeah.
But you need to know your customer story and just make the parallel wherever your story is, but don't force it. Like, yeah, obviously don't pretend to have been overweight if you were never overweight. Don't lie, but just find out what that real story is, where it's just like, and be able to describe it in the customer's own words.
Right.
That phrase, I felt trapped in my own body, that's powerful. There's something about that feels really true and really painful and emotional. And if you can find language like that, either from your own experience or what your customers have said to you, then you want to put that in the story. You don't want to we always, as business owners, we try to make up what our customers are going through. Just listen to them.
A before and after photo is great. A lot of fitness brands like to use that in their messaging. But without the emotional details, the struggles, the small victories, the real reason why someone wanted to change, you're missing the most powerful parts of your story. My favorite question to ask people is, walk me through your day before this situation was resolved. Like, what was it like? Anything relating to, especially chronic pain, like you described it. You get up and you can't even move, and you go through the whole day of tackling all the challenges that are a result of not being able to, being in pain all the time. How did this solution or service help you? Now tell me the story of what it's like now. Yeah. And that's like the most powerful two questions, Yeah. But what mistakes, like you mentioned about not, faking that you've been through something you haven't been through, obviously, that's not good. What other mistakes do fitness brands tend to make, or fitness and health brands? I'm thinking fitness more because that's where you see like the before and after types of things, where there tends to be more stories, but health oriented as well. What are some mistakes?
Yeah, I think certainly a lot of the mistakes are not being specific enough, especially with emotional details. Yeah. Like it's one thing to see somebody with like 25% body fat and then see them at like 15% and just see, oh, they've got visible abs now. Yay, I want that. Great. But just like, I've wanted abs for a long time, since my daughter was born. I have not had them since she was born, and I haven't been able to get my diet and my gym going enough. I mean, I still go to the gym as much as I can, but I just I'm not in the same shape as I was before I had kids.
Before you got pregnant.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it kind of sounded like when you said
my wife did all of the work and I just gained sympathy weight beside her. but like what I most care about now is not that. What I really care about is having the energy to keep up with my daughter, being able to hoist her up in my arms, not being in pain when I pick her up. And actually, that's where I am now, which is great. Like I was very tired when she was first born. I was also not getting any sleep, of course. But I started doing a lot more mobility training as I was getting back into working out, and I just feel like I feel more pain free now, and I feel less like I feel more present with her because I can pick her up, I can bend down, I can squat down to do a tea party with her. And that's what really matters to me, more than the abs, right? And so I think that's a big mistake that fitness brands make, is they're not tapping into what people really want, which is abs is nice and flashy for men to make them feel like, oh, that's what I want. But like, that might not motivate somebody to go through the program. Right. What might motivate them is to tap into a deeper why and a deeper reason that they really want. And part of the way you do that with storytelling is also being specific about details. So like when you're asking your customers, like, what was your day like? It took me 10 minutes to get my shoes on because I was struggling so much.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's that image, and you can sort of picture that. You're taken inside that person's front door, and you're like looking at them struggling to put their shoes on the stairs. That's what like movies do so well, is they take those little moments of life and really show them. And so I think that's what that a lot of, all marketers make this mistake, but fitness brands too. It's like, go for the details. Don't just say, X number of pounds, 12 months later, this number of pounds. Like, what were the details of the before and after, and the emotional details?
It makes so much sense. I used to run an online business, fitness business for women over 50, because that was my age group. And I knew that this age group is not interested so much. And yeah, they want flat abs, but it's not the purpose of why they want to get in shape. They want to be able to get up off the floor. They want to be able to, like you said, be active with their grandkids if they have grandkids.
Yeah.
And that's more important to them than any of the other aesthetics. I mean, sure, they want nice arms and a tank top, but that was not number one. And what I used to see a lot of times I'd see it online with, younger fitness trainers, especially male trainers trying to cater to, like, I never could understand how a woman in her 50s would be able to trust, a trainer in their 20s, especially if it's a male who says he's a specialized.
If you can't tell their story properly because you haven't experienced yourself, maybe you're in the wrong thing. I was in the wrong niche for a long time because I was marketing myself to tech entrepreneurs, raising VC funds, and I was helping them do that. But I'd never done that.
Yeah.
I was telling them to do something. I was comfortable with, I knew I got results for them because I had the theory of like, here's how to speak better. Here's how to tell a better story. I knew I could help them with that, but I was telling them to do something that I'd never been through. So I didn't know what it was like, and then I saw other pitch coaches who were like, I've raised money from 3 different companies. I know what it's like, the long nights, the like 18 months, left, and the being able to, and I was just like, I can't speak to these problems in the same way. So I just didn't feel good about marketing to that anymore. Cause I was like, this isn't real. I'm not one of these people. And so that's why I moved much more to coaches and to consultants or solopreneurs, because that's what I am. And I spend my days as that. So I think people might also want to consider who they're actually targeting and if they can actually relate to them.
So to wrap up, I asked Will for 2 or 3 tactics that a fitness or health brand, or even just any entrepreneur, should keep in mind to help them improve their storytelling.
So really think about those 2 frameworks I talked about, the childhood origin, youth awakening, and adult choice. If you can get that down and tell it in just like 3 or 4 sentences, you will be amazed, and maybe show a picture of yourself as a younger person. You will be amazed at the responses you get there, the emotions that can stir up. The other thing is, you should be very clear on the customer transformation story. So the problem that the customer has, the solution that you're offering, and the prize that will be. So if you can make sure that's there, certainly the personal story, but also the customer story. And then don't talk like ChatGPT. Like, now we have a word for it. People have been talking like ChatGPT before ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's marketing speak. I call it marketing speak. Like
marketing speak, corporate speak. Our dynamic team has unique insights with 30 plus decades experience. And you're just like, this is every about page ever. Why would I ever read this? So that's what I think about, is how do you talk like a real person? Stop using jargon. Don't say dynamic. Don't say transformative. Don't say insights. Just say, me and my wife met 20 years ago. We both loved yoga, and it was like the way we connected with each other. And we just like every Friday night, and then put in those little details. Every Friday night, we'd go to the yoga thing on Bloor Street in downtown Toronto. We'd do an hour of hot yoga together, and then we would just come out and we would like love each other. This is a true story. It's from me and my wife. And, and so that kind of thing makes people go, oh, I recognize this is real. This is true. And I, even if I don't have the exact same experience, I recognize that this is like a real emotion. Right. And so say it like that. Use real words that you would say if you were speaking out loud to somebody in a non-professional setting. That's the kind of stuff that speaks. So, and then don't overwrite, just less. One thing I always say for websites, presentations, whatever, say less.
Yeah. And on that note, I'll say less.
My own
Where can people find you? I know you're active on LinkedIn. Is there any shout out to your website or anything you'd like to put out?
Yeah, my main places are LinkedIn, and I have a newsletter, which is the Greenblast, played off my last name, Greenblatt. So thegreenblast.beehive.com. It's also featured on my LinkedIn. So if you go to Will Greenblatt, my name at LinkedIn, you'll find it there. And then I also have a paid community where people for $150 a month, we work together twice a week for an hour, and we work on all these things of your storytelling, your assets. So if anybody is a solopreneur and wants to check that out, I'd love to have them. But certainly LinkedIn is a great place to start.
Great. I'll put all that in the show notes, and I appreciate your time today, Will. This has been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Linda. It was great.
So if you're working on an about page, social media post, or even an ad, ask yourself, am I telling a compelling origin story? Am I clearly showcasing my customer's transformation? And most importantly, does it sound like something a human would actually say? And if you love this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. And if you're ready to start telling stories that actually connect with your audience, start by mapping out your origin story and your customer transformation story, because those right words can make all the difference. See you next week.